The neon skyline of New Berlin reflected in the rain-slick streets, a shimmering mosaic of color and shadow. Somewhere between the glow of 1,000 holograms and the whispers of the underground, Emma stood, silent, untraceable, dangerous. She wore black like it was her second skin. A high-collared coat concealed the sleek silhouette beneath, but it was her eyes, crimson and unnervingly luminous, that captured attention. Not human, not entirely alien either. To those who knew, Emma was a ghost in the political machine, a shadow that whispered into the ears of power brokers and crime lords alike. The comm in her ear crackled. "Targets on the move, Quadrant 7. Are you in position?" The voice was calm, but Emma knew better than to trust calm voices in her line of work. "I've been in position," she murmured, voice low enough to be lost in the hum of passing hovercars. Tonight's mission wasn't about assassination. Not yet. It was about information, something far more dangerous in the year 3985 than any weapon. Somewhere out there was a man named Kyle Veros, the kind of name that made corporate generals sweat and underground syndicates listen, and Emma was tasked with finding him before anyone else did. She moved through the crowd effortlessly, every step calculated, every turn timed to blend into the flow of bodies. People noticed her beauty, the black hair cascading in loose waves, the flawless porcelain skin, but they never noticed her hands, always close to the hidden blade, or her eyes, which scanned for danger even as she smiled faintly at strangers. Her internal HUD blinked with a warning. Pursuers detected. 3 of them, untrained by the look of their movements. But that didn't mean they weren't dangerous. Emma didn't run. She didn't need to. Instead, she took a sudden turn into a narrow alleyway, lit only by the flicker of a broken holo sign. The footsteps behind her quickened. When they rounded the corner, the first thing they saw was red, 2 eyes glowing in the darkness like a predator's. The second thing they felt was cold steel against their throats. "Tell whoever sent you," Emma said, her voice a slow, deliberate threat, "that I don't like being followed." By the time the 3 men stumbled out of the alley, Emma was gone. Only the faint scent of rain and metal lingered. Somewhere far above, on a rooftop overlooking the sprawl, she was already watching her next move unfold. Because tonight was not about survival, it was about setting the game in motion. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. In New Berlin, it rarely did. From Emma's vantage point on the 82nd floor of a half-derelict spire, the city below looked like a restless organism. Hovercars darting like cells through glowing arteries, markets pulsing with light and noise, corporate towers glinting like sharpened teeth. And somewhere in that sprawling electric jungle was Kyle Veros. Officially, Kale was a dead man. The Galactic Trade Council had executed him 3 years ago for treason, broadcasted it on every major holo network. Unofficially, Emma had intercepted 3 separate encrypted transmissions in the past month that carried his biometric signature. Whoever was keeping him alive had power, the kind that could destabilize governments. Her contact, an information broker named Joran Cade, was late. That wasn't unusual. Joran had the time management skills of a drunk asteroid miner, but Emma hated waiting, especially when her instincts told her that every second she lingered in one place, someone was narrowing in on her. When the door finally hissed open, Joran stumbled in, his coat dripping, his face pale. "You're getting harder to find," he said, dropping a small data core onto the table between them. "That's either a good thing or a sign you're running out of friends." Emma didn't smile. "Cut the poetry. Is it him?" Joran slid into the seat opposite her, lowering his voice. "If you mean Kale Varos, then yes. And he's not hiding on some backwater moon. He's here, in New Berlin." Her fingers tapped the table once. "Where?" "That's the part you're not going to like," he said, leaning forward. "He's under the protection of the Astra Cartel, and you know who runs the Astra Cartel?" Emma's crimson eyes narrowed. Selvara Wren. The name tasted like ash. Selvara wasn't just dangerous, she was untouchable. A woman who owned half the city's underground and had a talent for making people disappear so completely their names were erased from history. If Cale was with her, this mission had just gone from difficult to near suicidal. Emma reached for the data core. Before her fingers touched it, Joran placed his hand over hers. "You're not the only one hunting him," he warned. "A dozen different factions have trackers in the city. The corporate mercs, the syndicates, even the royal agents. And I'm betting at least half of them would rather see you dead than see you succeed." Emma's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Good. That means I'm ahead of them already." She slid the core into the hidden compartment of her coat and stood. The rain outside pounded harder, the sky flashing with the distant shimmer of orbital traffic. Somewhere below, in the labyrinth of streets, Cale Varos was breathing air he wasn't supposed to breathe, and Emma intended to find out why. The moment she stepped outside, a shadow moved on the rooftop across from her. She caught the faint glint of a rifle scope, just long enough to duck into cover. So, the game had already started. And Emma had no intention of losing. The underground district known as Sector 9 had a smell that clung to you. Synthetic spice, rusted metal, and the faint acrid sting of weapon discharge. Emma kept her hood up as she navigated the neon-slick streets, every step echoing on cracked plascrete. She could feel eyes following her, tracking her movements from shadowed doorways and hollow-lit balconies. Selvara Wren's network didn't need guards in uniform. The street itself was the guard, every vendor, every street rat, every low-level thug an extension of her reach. Emma's target wasn't Selvara herself, not yet. She needed a thread, a weak link in the chain. That thread was Terran Voss, a mid-tier enforcer for the Astra cartel. Terran had a gambling problem, a weakness Emma could exploit. More importantly, Terran was one of the few who had personally seen Cale Varos in the past week. She found him in a den called the Hollow Vein, a dim bar carved into the belly of an old freight hauler. The air was thick with smoke from burning Xiran leaves, and every corner seemed to hide a different illicit deal. Terran sat at a table in the back, chips scattered before him, his thick fingers tapping in irritation as he lost another hand. The dealer's cybernetic eyes flicked toward Emma as she approached, but said nothing. "You're sitting in a dangerous spot," Terran grunted without looking up. Emma slid into the seat opposite him, her crimson eyes locked onto his. "Only if you don't like the view." He looked at her then, squinting, recognition flashing in his gaze. "I've heard about you, the one who doesn't officially exist, the Council's pet ghost." She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial murmur. "I'm looking for someone, and you're going to help me find him." Terran's laugh was short and humorless. "Do I look suicidal? Selvara would skin me alive." Emma's hand moved under the table, pressing the cold barrel of a compact pulse pistol against his thigh. Her tone didn't change. It stayed calm, almost conversational. "You'll talk to me, or you'll never leave this table again. Choose quickly." The sweat beading on his forehead wasn't from the heat. He swallowed, glancing around to make sure no one was watching too closely. "He's in the glass spire, top floors. Selvara keeps him there under constant guard. No one gets in without her approval." Emma's mind worked quickly. The glass spire wasn't just any building. It was Selvara's jewel, a fortress disguised as a luxury tower, where deals worth empires were made in penthouses high above the city. Getting inside would require more than stealth. It would require leverage. Before she could push for more details, Terran's expression changed, eyes going wide, his lips parting as if to warn her. Emma didn't turn her head, but she saw the reflection in his glass. 3 figures in dark coats moving toward them, hands tucked beneath their lapels. Not cartel muscle. Too polished, too precise. Corporate operatives. She shoved Terran aside, just as the first shot seared past her ear, plasma tearing a hole through the wall. The bar erupted into chaos, tables flipping, patrons screaming, the dealer diving for cover. Emma vaulted backward, returning fire, her pistol humming with each deadly pulse. By the time the smoke cleared, the three operatives lay on the floor, their bodies already cooling, but Taryn was gone, vanished into the panicked crowd. Emma cursed under her breath. She had her location, but now she had a bigger problem. Whoever those operatives worked for knew she was here, and in New Berlin, that was the kind of attention that got people buried. The glass spire wasn't just a building, it was a statement, an arrogant shard of crystal and steel that stabbed into the smog-hazed sky, lit from within by 1,000 shifting holograms. Its surface reflected the neon sprawl of New Berlin, but the higher you looked, the more it seemed to vanish into the clouds, as if the top floors belonged to another world entirely. Emma stood at the base of it, her hood low over her crimson eyes, the rain turning the streets into shimmering rivers. She could feel the hum of the building's defense grid in her bones. Getting in without clearance was suicide, which meant she had to create her own clearance. Step 1. Become someone else. She ducked into an alley and activated the holomask embedded in her wristband. Her skin shimmered, her features bending, hair darkening to a glossy black bob, eyes turning hazel. Within seconds, she was no longer Emma, the phantom agent. They saw Alina Drake, an event coordinator on Selvara Wren's payroll. The identity wasn't stolen, it was borrowed. Permanently, if necessary. With a swipe of her forged ID, she strode into the spire's lobby, a cathedral of light and chrome. Security drones glided silently overhead, scanning every guest, while the human guard stood rigid, eyes tracking for the slightest irregularity. "In name and business?" the front desk AI asked, voice smooth as oil. Emma smiled. "Alina Drake, I'm here to oversee the gala preparations for Selvara's private suite." The AI's hollow eyes blinked once, twice, then its voice softened into polite compliance. "Welcome, Ms. Drake. The lifts are yours. Step 2, walk like you belong." The elevator was a glass capsule that shot upward with unnerving speed. Floors blurred past, each level more opulent than the last. Private gardens, art galleries, executive offices. The city fell away beneath her until it looked like a glittering wound in the earth. When the doors opened, the air changed. It was warmer here, scented faintly with Arius orchids, a flower extinct on Earth, imported from some distant colony. Emma stepped out into a marble corridor, guarded by 2 men in tailored suits. Not the bulky cartel muscle from the lower city, these were trained, clean, precise. She gave them a bored nod, the kind of acknowledgement a staffer would give to people she'd walked past 100 times. They didn't stop her. Step 3. Find Cale. The suite doors slid open into a room that looked more like a throne hall than a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows, velvet shadows, and the soft, constant glow of the city beyond. Selvara Wren wasn't here, but Emma could. Feel her presence in every detail, the cruel elegance of the furniture, the predator's geometry of the space. She heard voices down the hall, one male, one female. The male voice stopped her in her tracks. Even distorted through the walls, Cale Varos's tone was unmistakable. She had studied it in briefings, in intercepted transmissions, calm, magnetic, with that dangerous undercurrent that made people follow him into war. She edged closer, listening. "I told you, Selvara," Cale's voice said, low but firm. "I won't be a pawn in your politics. I didn't come here for your games." Selvara's reply was silk over steel. "You came here because I allow it. Never forget that." Emma's pulse quickened. This was her moment. If she could see him, maybe even make contact, the mission would shift in her favor. She took one step toward the door and froze. A shadow fell across the hallway. She turned her head slowly, meeting the sharp gaze of a guard who hadn't been there a second ago. His eyes flicked to the ID badge on her chest, then to her face. "Alina Drake?" he said. "Funny. I saw Lena in the lobby 5 minutes ago." The corridor seemed to narrow around her. Emma's hand inched toward the hidden blade strapped to her thigh. She had two options: fight here and risk alerting the entire floor, or bluff her way out. But before she could decide, the guard tapped his earpiece. "Selvara, we have a problem." And just like that, Emma realized, she wasn't going to walk out of the glass spire the way she came in. The guard's eyes locked on hers like a targeting system, and in that fraction of a second, Emma knew three things. She wasn't going to talk her way out of this. Selvara already knew she was here. The spire wasn't just a building. It was a cage, and the bars were closing. "Stay right where you are," the guard said, his voice taut with the controlled confidence of someone who believed the building itself would back him up. Emma's smile was a razor's edge. "You first." Her hand moved faster than thought, blade sliding free, a flick of her wrist, and the man's weapon clattered to the marble. She twisted, driving her shoulder into him, sending them both crashing against the wall. He wasn't dead yet. She didn't have time to finish this quietly. The spire reacts. A shrill ping echoed down the corridor. A subtle alarm, no flashing lights, no sirens, just a soft chime that meant every security system had just been notified of her location. The walls seemed to shift, panels sliding open to reveal sleek drone turrets that rotated toward her, tiny lenses glowing red. Emma ran. Her boots hit the marble like gunfire as she darted down the corridor, slamming her wristband against a locked door. The hollow mask flickered, glitching between Alina Drake's face and her own crimson-eyed reflection before the lock reluctantly gave way. Inside was a service passage, narrow, dim, lined with utility pipes and humming with the spire's heartbeat. Perfect. The glimpse. She was halfway down the passage when she heard it, a voice close enough to be real, not muffled by walls this time. "You'll regret this, Selvara," Calvero said, tone clipped, furious. Emma slowed. There was a grated vent ahead, and through it she saw him. He was taller than the dossier had made him seem, his posture coiled like a soldier at rest, but ready to strike. The lighting caught the sharp lines of his face, the shadow of a scar at his jaw, and eyes that seemed to burn even in the dimness. Selvara stood opposite him, smiling with the cruel ease of someone who thought they'd already won. "Regret," she said, "is for the weak. And you, my dear Cale, have survived far too long to pretend to be one of them." Emma's fingers tightened on the vent's frame. She couldn't linger. The spire's internal sensors would triangulate her in seconds, but leaving without seeing him again felt wrong, like walking away from a crucial thread in a web she hadn't finished weaving. Then Cale's head tilted slightly, his gaze flicking toward the vent. For a moment, just a moment, Emma thought he saw her. The drop. A door at the far end of the passage hissed open and two guards stormed in, rifles up. The service tunnel left no room for maneuver. Emma ran toward them. At the last second, she slid low, kicking one man's legs out from under him, ripping his rifle from his grasp and slamming the butt into the other's visor. She didn't stop. Her momentum carried her straight through the open door into a loading bay filled with crates and a freight elevator. The elevator was descending, slowly, too slowly. She hit the emergency override, forcing the doors shut before the guards could follow. The lift dropped, and, for 30 precious seconds, the only sound was the groan of steel cables and the distant hum of the city. When the doors opened, she was in the lower maintenance levels, an industrial labyrinth of shadow and steam. Perfect for disappearing. The message. Emma found an exit into the rainy streets and melted into the crowd, her holomask reactivating to give her a stranger's forgettable face. But her mind wasn't on the narrow escape. It was on the look Cale had given her through the vent. Not shock, not suspicion, recognition. And that meant one of two things. Either Cale Veros already knew who she was, or he'd been waiting for her. The rain hadn't let up in hours. Neon reflections danced across puddles, fracturing Emma's distorted reflection into shards of crimson-eyed danger. She slipped through the crowded back alleys of New Berlin, careful to keep to the shadows, her boots silent against wet cobblestone. Every step carried the tension of someone who had narrowly escaped death and knew the hunt wasn't over. The contact Emma needed information, and for that she had to reach the only person who could answer the question burning in her mind. Why did Cale recognize her? A dingy club in the industrial sector, tucked between shipping containers and graffiti-stained walls, was her destination. Its neon sign flickered, the Iron Veil. Inside, smoke curled like ghosts around the silhouettes of patrons, voices low, dangerous. She moved through the crowd, hollow mask off now. She needed to be remembered, or at least seen as someone trustworthy. A single nod from the bartender, a gesture only those in the underground network would recognize, granted her access to the private lounge. And there he was, Cale Varos. He looked nothing like the man in the official records or the briefings. Closer, sharper, alive. He was perched on the edge of a velvet chaise, fingers tapping a rhythm against the armrest. His scar caught the light. His crimson eyes seemed almost too aware, too knowing. Emma stopped a meter away. His gaze lifted, not startled, not wary, but assessing. "You're fast," he said, voice low, measured. "Too fast to be just." "An intruder. Who are you?" Emma's lips curved into a confident, sharp smile. "Someone who needs answers, and maybe alliances." He raised an eyebrow, leaning back. "Alliances? With me?" The proposition Emma studied him for a heartbeat before speaking, lowering her voice. "Selvara's not just the Spire's ruler. She's controlling the city from the shadows. You're walking into her trap every time you leave this building. You know that." Cale's gaze narrowed, and a faint smirk played at the corner of his lips. "You know a lot for someone who disappeared down the service shaft like a ghost. Why help me?" "Because our goals align, for now," Emma said, her tone confident, commanding. "I need to know why you looked at me, like you knew me. That recognition means something, doesn't it?" He paused. Seconds stretched into eternities in the smoke-filled lounge. Then, almost imperceptibly, his smirk softened. "Maybe it does," he murmured. The trap tightens. Emma and Cale's conversation was interrupted by a subtle vibration. Her wristband pulsed, alerting her to a surveillance sweep in the sector. The Spire's drones had traced her escape, and Selvara's reach was longer than she had anticipated. "Time's short," she whispered. "We need to move, now." Cale's smirk returned, sharper, predatory. "Follow me, and keep close. One wrong step, and even your ghost won't save you." Together they slipped into the shadows of the industrial district. Pipes hissed steam, crates stacked in precarious towers, the neon glinting like 1,000 watchful eyes. Every corner could hide a drone. Every alley could be a sniper's nest. Emma's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the thrill of the hunt. This was where the dance of shadows began, where trust was currency and danger was a constant companion. The connection. For the first time since the glass spire, Emma felt it, the magnetic pull between her and Cale. An unspoken recognition of shared purpose, mutual danger, and something deeper, something unspoken that promised intrigue, loyalty, and perhaps a spark of something more. As they disappeared into the labyrinthine alleys, one thought echoed. In Emma's mind, this isn't just survival, this is the beginning of everything. The industrial district stretched before Emma like a metallic labyrinth, pipes twisting overhead, steam hissing from every crack in the walls. Shadows pooled in corners, neon reflections fractured in the puddles beneath her boots, and the faint hum of surveillance drones whispered danger with every step. She moved silently, close behind Cale, who seemed as at home in the darkness as a predator in its territory. There was a rhythm to his steps, calculated and precise, and Emma felt herself matching it instinctively. "This way," he murmured, pointing to a narrow side passage barely visible behind stacks of shipping crates. She followed, noting the faint glow of hidden sensors along the walls. "They've upgraded security since you last ran through these streets. Even your ghost wouldn't slip through unnoticed for long." Emma's crimson eyes flicked to the sensors, analyzing their patterns. A calculated smile curved her lips. "That's why you're here. You've got experience with traps." "Experience? Yes. Survival, always," Cale replied, his voice low, carrying the weight of a man who had walked through countless deadly encounters. "But don't think I'm doing this for you." She laughed softly, almost lost in the hiss of steam. "I'm not asking for charity, just efficiency." They moved with fluid precision, avoiding motion sensors and hidden cameras until they reached the facade of a massive warehouse. Its steel doors were reinforced, and above them, a small blinking surveillance node rotated lazily, scanning the perimeter. Emma crouched, examining the wiring, and her hands moved deftly, bypassing the node with a delicate touch that made the mechanism blink and shift harmlessly aside. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of oil and ozone. Machinery loomed like sleeping giants, and crates stacked precariously reached the ceiling. A faint light glimmered at the far end, illuminating a network of cables that led to a hidden control terminal. Cale gestured for her to follow, silently. "This is where Silvara's network feeds into the city grid. Take it down, and we disrupt her reach for hours. Maybe enough to gain leverage." Emma nodded, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline. Every nerve was alive, attuned to potential threats. Her fingers danced over the control panel, overriding encrypted access codes, bypassing firewall layers with ease born of years in the shadows. The terminal pulsed, lights flickering as the system responded to her commands. A sudden click behind them made Emma freeze. She turned sharply, eyes meeting a reflection in polished metal. Two guards moving almost silently, weapons raised. Coyle reacted instantly, a flick of his wrist sending one sprawling into the crates, while the other's rifle clattered to the floor under Emma's calculated strike. They moved together like a single organism, fluid, precise, deadly. Once the immediate threat was neutralized, Emma returned to the terminal, completing the final overrides. The lights on the warehouse control panels dimmed and flickered before plunging the room into near darkness. A soft alarm buzzed briefly before silence reigned. "We've done it," she whispered, heart still hammering. Cale's gaze lingered on her, a shadow of something deeper behind his crimson eyes. "Impressive," he said, voice almost a growl. "You make it look effortless." Emma allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. "I've had practice. Now we move before Silvara realizes anything is wrong." They slipped back into the darkness, two figures melting into the alleyways of the industrial district. Every step brought new tension, new danger, and yet a subtle, unspoken connection grew between them. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this partnership, forged in necessity and danger, was the beginning of something neither of them could anticipate, but both were unwilling to resist. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the steel and asphalt, masking their departure. Emma looked at Cale, and in that brief glance, a silent understanding passed between them. Survival was only the beginning. In the shadows of the city, alliances would form, betrayals would unfold, and the line between enemy and ally would blur, and Emma knew without doubt that whatever came next, she would face it head on, with danger at her back, fire in her veins, and the thrill of the hunt guiding every step. The city slept under a haze of neon rain, but Emma knew better. In New Berlin, darkness was never empty, shadows shifted, and every alley whispered secrets. She and Kyle moved through the maze of streets with deliberate caution, their presence barely more than a ghostly ripple against the puddled asphalt. The warehouse mission had been a success, but Silvara's reach was far from neutralized. The Queen of the Shadows had eyes everywhere. Emma's crimson eyes scanned every corner as they passed. Even the faint hum of distant hovercars could mask the approach of a sniper or an invisible drone. "We need more than disruption," she murmured. "Selvara anticipates chaos. We need leverage, something personal." Kale's jaw tightened. "Her network isn't just codes and wires. Her power lives in the people she controls. Influence, favors, fear. If we pull the wrong thread, everyone who trusts us dies." Emma's lips curved into a sly smile. "Then we'll pull the right one. Carefully." They reached a private access elevator concealed in the side of a crumbling skyscraper. Inside, the air smelled faintly metallic, with a pulse of electricity that hummed beneath their feet. Emma pressed a hidden panel, and the elevator descended silently into the bowels of the city, to a secret floor where Selvara's informants often met in secrecy. As the doors opened, Emma's heart quickened. The room was dimly lit, illuminated by the soft glow of holographic screens suspended in the air, casting eerie reflections across the walls. Figures moved between the light, talking in hushed tones, unaware of the intruders. Emma's red eyes scanned, cataloging everyone's positions, their gestures, the subtle signals of loyalty or fear. Kale leaned close, voice barely a whisper. "We go in as shadows, no mistakes." Emma nodded, stepping forward. Her presence was deliberate but subtle, enough to command attention if noticed, enough to vanish if threatened. She intercepted one of Selvara's lieutenants, a wiry man with nervous movements and a faint tremor in his hand. "You're far from home," she said smoothly, voice velvet over steel, "and yet you walk like you own the place." The man froze, a flicker of recognition, or was it fear, passing over his features. Emma leaned closer, letting her charisma, her authority, and the subtle menace in her gaze do the work words never could. "Tell me everything," she whispered, "or you'll regret it." Before he could respond, a soft alarm pinged, a warning from a hidden drone that Selvara herself was approaching. The lieutenant's eyes widened, and Emma knew their time was short. Kale's hand brushed hers as they moved, guiding her toward an emergency exit, a small hatch that led into the maintenance tunnels beneath the city. Steam hissed around them, and the metallic walls reflected their shadows like specters of war. Every heartbeat was a countdown. Once in the tunnels, Emma allowed herself a breath. "She's coming," she said. "Selvara is here. Kale's." Crimson eyes met hers, a dangerous spark lighting within them. "Good. Then it's time she learns that shadows can strike back." Emma's smile was a promise and a warning. In the silence of the tunnels, she felt the thrill of the hunt coil inside her like a living thing. Every plan, every risk, every subtle maneuver was coming together. The web of intrigue was vast, and she was at the center, pulling strings that Selvara didn't even know existed. Outside, the city lights flickered as a drone passed above, scanning, searching. But in the bowels of New Berlin, two ghosts moved silently, carrying with them the spark of rebellion, the thrill of danger, and the certainty that when Selvara emerged, she would find herself facing forces she could not anticipate. And a woman who would not be ignored. And in that moment, Emma knew that tonight would be the beginning of a war of shadows, secrets, and hearts, entangled in perilous allure. The tunnels beneath New Berlin were a labyrinth of steel and shadow, but Emma knew every twist and turn. Her crimson eyes adjusted easily to the dim light, scanning every grate, every corner, every faint movement that could signal danger. Beside her, Kale's presence was steady, a silent anchor, his hand occasionally brushing against hers. Not a touch of comfort, but a subtle signal of coordination. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. They reached the central node of Selvara's operations, a massive chamber bristling with tech and guarded by a cadre of elite operatives. Floating holographic screens displayed live feeds from the entire city, maps of patrols and encrypted communications. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line, the nerve center of Selvara's empire, and they were about to walk right in. "Two options," Kale whispered, crouching beside her. Stealth or force, one misstep, and we're exposed. Emma's gaze swept the room, noting the placement of guards and the patterns of drones. Force is messy. We're ghosts tonight. Her voice was calm, confident, each word a quiet command. We take what we need and we leave before anyone knows we were here. They slipped through a maintenance hatch, bypassing the outer perimeter. Emma's mind raced, calculating timings, probabilities, contingencies. Every detail mattered. The difference between success and death was often measured in heartbeats. Inside, they moved like shadows, silent, invisible. Emma's hand brushed against a control panel, and with deft precision, she rerouted cameras, creating blind spots in the surveillance. Cale neutralized a single guard with a swift, precise motion, dragging the body into a shadowed alcove. Each move was choreographed, practiced, almost elegant in its danger. At the center of the chamber, a raised platform held a throne-like chair surrounded by digital arrays and floating security glyphs. Selvara sat there, eyes narrowing as the distant sensors detected the subtle breach. Her voice, calm yet icy, echoed through the comm network. "Emma," she hissed, almost a whisper, but felt like a whip crack. "I wondered when you'd show. Your face in my domain." Emma paused, letting the words sink in. Her fingers hovered over the controls, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I didn't come for a conversation," she said. "I came for leverage. And you've been very generous with it." Selvara's red eyes glinted in the dim light. A predator's focus sharpened. Bold, dangerous, and naive. A soft hum began. The activation of a defense system, energy pulses crawling along the walls, ready to incinerate intruders. Emma's pulse quickened, but her mind was razor-sharp. She pressed a series of overrides, disabling the glyphs one by one. Cale, covering her flank as drones descended from above. Sparks flew as systems overloaded, and the room briefly erupted in chaos. Selvara rose, moving with fluid grace, a mixture of fury and amusement on her face. "You think you can dismantle my empire with tricks and shadows?" Emma stepped forward, her crimson eyes locking with Selvara's. "I don't think, Selvara. I know." For a tense moment, the room was suspended between violence and strategy, each woman calculating, testing, measuring. Then, in a controlled, almost balletic sequence, Emma and Cale forced Selvara to retreat behind her holographic defenses, isolating her from her operatives. The chamber quieted, save for the residual hum of disabled tech. Emma exhaled, her body tense but poised. "We have what we came for," she murmured to Cale. "Now it's time to disappear before she recovers." Cale's eyes met hers, a glimmer of admiration hidden beneath the ever-present caution. "You make chaos look beautiful," he said. Emma allowed herself a fleeting smile. "And you make it survivable." Together, they melted into the shadows, leaving Selvara's central node in temporary disarray. Outside, the neon city thrummed, unaware that the balance of power had shifted, if only slightly. And in the back of Emma's mind, a dangerous, thrilling thought lingered. Selvara had seen her face, and now the real game had begun. Tonight was just the opening move. The streets of New Berlin glimmered with rain-soaked neon, a deceptive serenity masking the chaos beneath. Emma moved through the crowd like a specter, her black coat blending with the darkness, crimson eyes scanning every reflection, every passerby. Cale followed, silent and watchful, their shared presence a tether against the unpredictability of the city. The raid on Selvara's central node had not gone unnoticed. Word traveled fast in the shadows. Loyalists whispered warnings into the ears of their mistress, and soon the entire city's underworld pulsed with tension. Emma could feel it, the eyes, the subtle shifts of focus, the almost imperceptible thrum of surveillance drones adjusting to track her movements. "We need a safe house," Emma muttered, voice low and steady. "Selvara's not just angry. She's planning, calculating. This city will feel her reach soon." Cale's jaw tightened. "Safe houses are temporary. She's going to retaliate quickly. We need to stay ahead, not hide." Emma's lips pressed. Together thoughtfully. Ahead requires information, and I intend to collect it. They arrived at a nondescript building disguised as an abandoned warehouse. Inside, the room was sparse but sophisticated. Tech interfaces hummed softly, encrypted communications flickered across screens, and surveillance feeds showed a fragmented, shifting cityscape. Emma's fingers danced across the holographic interface, cataloging the city's data streams, tracing Salvara's influence in real time. There, she murmured, pointing at a cluster of nodes. She's consolidating her power through smaller gangs, using the city's information networks. If we can intercept her communications, we can predict her next move. Cale's eyes darkened with concern. Interception isn't simple. One slip, one anomaly in the network, and she'll know we're inside her systems. That could get us killed. Emma tilted her head, crimson hair catching the dim glow. I didn't survive this long by avoiding risk. We'll do it carefully, and when she least expects it. Hours passed as they worked, weaving through encrypted feeds, tracing subtle energy patterns and decoding fragments of communication. Emma's mind moved like a finely tuned instrument, calculating probabilities, anticipating contingencies. Cale provided cover, alert, and tense, a sentinel of flesh and blood in a digital battlefield. A sudden ping startled them, a security breach alert in a sector they hadn't monitored closely. Emma's pulse quickened. She's moving faster than I thought. Salvara doesn't forgive mistakes, and she doesn't forget faces. Outside, the city continued its deceptive calm. Rain streaked the neon-lit streets, reflecting advertisements for products Emma had long since ignored. She felt a thrill, a pulse of adrenaline, the danger, the stakes, the elegance of strategy unfolding in real time. Every heartbeat, every decision mattered. "This is more than a fight for survival," Emma whispered. "This is a game of influence, control, and perception. We win by being invisible, yet unavoidable." Cale's hand brushed hers as they prepared to move again, a silent acknowledgement of trust and shared purpose. "And if she corners us?" he asked. Emma's crimson eyes glinted. "Then we become the storm she never saw coming." The night stretched on, tense and electric, as Emma and Cale navigated a labyrinth of shadows, espionage, and unspoken dangers. Each step, each maneuver, each decision pulled them deeper into Salvara's web. And yet, Emma thrived in the uncertainty. She knew one truth. The moment Salvara retaliated, the real battle would begin. And in that moment, Emma would not only survive, but claim her place as the unseen force shaping the city's destiny. The dawn over New Berlin was deceptive. From above, the city shimmered in its usual technicolor glow, neon lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets. But below the surface, tension simmered like a coiled spring. Emma moved through the corridors of an abandoned maglev terminal, every step calculated, every glance scanning the shadows. Cale followed, silent and alert, their connection unspoken but complete. Salvara's retaliation had begun. The first wave arrived quietly, drones that hummed with precision, armed operatives camouflaged as maintenance crews, and digital traps laid across the city's network. Emma detected them all before they could strike, her crimson eyes scanning the chaos through layers of surveillance feeds. Each threat was anticipated, countered, and redirected with elegant precision. "They're probing for weaknesses," Sale murmured, crouching beside her, as a swarm of drones swept past overhead. "Salvara knows we touched her central node. She's testing our defenses." Emma's lips curved into a faint smile. "She's predictable when she's angry, and anger always exposes patterns." She tapped a console, rerouting the incoming drones into a deserted industrial sector. Sparks erupted as the machines collided with structural barriers. Let her think she's gaining ground. Let her overreach. A sudden alert flared on the holographic interface, a live feed showing Salvara herself standing atop a rooftop overlooking the city. Her gaze swept the streets with surgical precision, red eyes gleaming with fury and intelligence. Emma felt a thrill of danger. "She's watching," she said softly, "and she's deciding which pieces to move first." Without warning, a fleet of operatives descended into the terminal, their movements fluid, synchronized, and lethal. Emma and Cale melted into the shadows, disappearing and reappearing with ghost-like precision. Emma's mind raced as she manipulated the environment. Lights flickered, doors locked and unlocked, surveillance feeds looped to create phantom movements. Every step they took was both reaction and provocation. One operative caught a glimpse of movement and fired, a warning shot that shattered a nearby console. Sparks rained down like a digital fireworks display. Emma spun, directing Cale to flank the assailant while she neutralized the next wave with rapid, decisive precision. Her movements were almost balletic, lethal yet graceful, a testament to years of training and instinct. Amid the chaos, a communicator pinged a secure transmission from a contact deep inside Silvara's network. Emma's crimson eyes flicked to the feed, a message, encrypted but urgent, revealing a vulnerability in Silvara's surveillance grid, a small blind spot in the city's defenses. A smile tugged at Emma's lips. "This is our chance," she murmured. With coordinated precision, they moved through the maze of shadows, taking advantage of the blind spots, intercepting communications, and subtly manipulating Silvara's operatives against each other. Each small victory, each controlled misstep, brought them closer to destabilizing Silvara's hold on the city. But the moment of triumph was fleeting. A holographic projection flickered to life, Silvara's voice cutting through the hum of the city's underground network. "Emma, clever, resourceful, dangerous, but remember, every move you make has consequences. Every shadow you hide in will eventually vanish." Emma's crimson eyes met the projection, unwavering. "Then I'll make sure the shadows last longer than you ever thought possible." The confrontation was no longer just physical. It was a game of intellect, strategy, and psychological warfare. Silvara's reach was vast, her vengeance calculated. But Emma thrived in the pressure, turning each threat into an opportunity, each risk into a step closer to ultimate control. As night fell again over New Berlin, Emma and Cale emerged from the chaos, bloodied but unbroken, leaving behind a trail of confusion that would haunt Silvara for days. The city pulsed with the quiet hum of unseen power shifts, and Emma knew the battle had only just begun. Tonight, she had survived Silvara's wrath. Tomorrow she would reshape it. The city of New Berlin had never seemed more alive and more dangerous. From the elevated corridors of the maglev transit system, Emma watched the streets below, her crimson eyes reflecting the flickering neon signs that painted the night in blues and purples. The city itself had become a chessboard. Each building, alleyway, and rooftop, a square in a high-stakes game she could no longer afford to lose. Silvara's retaliation had escalated. Overnight, the streets erupted with coordinated strikes. Drones armed with non-lethal but incapacitating weapons, operatives that moved like shadows, and digital traps designed to scramble even the most secure surveillance networks. Emma could feel the pulse of the city, the rhythm of chaos. Every alert, every anomaly, every sudden silence became a signal she interpreted instinctively. Cale crouched beside her, scanning the horizon. "They've learned our patterns. They're predicting our moves now," he whispered. Emma's crimson eyes narrowed. "Then we need to become unpredictable, invisible, yet undeniable. We give them the illusion of control, then strike where they least expect." She activated a series of holographic decoys, each echoing her movements, creating a phantom army that slipped through the city like ghosts. Suddenly, a message pinged on her secure network, a tip from an insider in Silvara's organization. It revealed a critical meeting point where Silvara herself would be observing the city's underworld operations. Emma's pulse quickened. This was the chance she had been waiting for, a direct confrontation, but one carefully orchestrated to favor her. "Kale," she murmured, "we're going to draw her out. It's risky, but necessary. Tonight, we don't just survive. We take control of the narrative." They moved like shadows across the rooftops, their black attire blending seamlessly with the cityscape. Rain-slicked tiles reflected neon lights, each step a calculated decision. Below them, Selvara's operatives patrolled, unaware that the very environment they controlled had been turned against them. As they approached the meeting point, Emma deployed a series of micro-drones, creating false movements, diversions, and electronic interference. A group of operatives rushed toward one phantom, only to find nothing but an empty street. Emma's strategic precision allowed them to slip through unnoticed. Finally, they reached the vantage point overlooking the plaza where Selvara was watching. Emma observed her rival, confident, calculating, and radiating authority. But for the first time, Selvara's eyes flickered with doubt. Emma's decoys, combined with subtle manipulations of the city's networks, had created uncertainty in her adversary's mind. Emma's lips curved into a faint smile. "Control is perception," she whispered, "and perception is mine." From the shadows, she transmitted a carefully crafted message into the city's public channels, a subtle signal of Selvara's overreach, hints of weakness that would spread through her organization like wildfire. Within minutes, confusion rippled through Selvara's network. Loyalists hesitated, communication faltered, and the once coordinated strikes lost momentum. Selvara's crimson eyes met Emma's from the holographic feed. "You play a dangerous game," she said, voice sharp but tinged with something Emma hadn't expected, respect. Emma's crimson gaze never wavered. "I play to win," she replied, "and the board is mine." As the night deepened, the city seemed to exhale, tension lingering like an aftertaste of electricity. Emma and Kale slipped away unseen, leaving Selvara to reassess her strategies in the chaos Emma had orchestrated. The battle had shifted, subtle, psychological, and unmistakably in Emma's favor. Tomorrow, the real game would begin, but tonight, Emma had proven that she was no longer just a shadow in Selvara's world. She was the storm gathering strength and patience, ready to reshape everything in her path. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Sheets of water poured down over New Berlin, washing neon colors into distorted rivers that snaked through the gutters. The storm made the city feel alive, its heartbeat a low, ceaseless drum. But for Emma, it was more than weather. It was cover, the perfect curtain behind which her next move would unfold. She stood at the edge of a shattered rooftop, crimson eyes reflecting lightning as it split the sky. The air was electric, heavy, with both storm and tension. Beneath her, the underworld stirred like a restless beast. Gang leaders whispered, syndicates adjusted their allegiances, and smugglers rerouted their networks. Emma had seeded doubt within Selvara's empire, and now the fractures were spreading like cracks through glass. Kale joined her, his cloak drenched, his jaw set. "They're already turning on each other," he reported, handing her a data slate with intercepted transmissions. "Selvara's lieutenants don't trust her anymore. Some think she's lost control. Others think she's keeping secrets. The whole structure is crumbling." Emma's lips curved faintly, a smile sharp as a blade. Exactly as planned, but dismantling Selvara's empire required more than whispers. Emma needed chaos so loud, so unavoidable, that it would consume Selvara from within. She reached into her coat, pulling free a small case of crystalline devices, hollow seeds, capable of creating perfect illusions large enough to sway entire districts. "We'll turn her own people against her," Emma murmured. "Let them see betrayal where none exists. Let them believe she's playing favorites, sacrificing her loyalists for her ambition." That night, Emma and Kale infiltrated a series of critical hubs, an abandoned subway station that served as a black market exchange, a derelict skyscraper where mercenaries gathered, and the hidden docks where smugglers fueled their ships. In each place, Emma planted hollow seeds programmed to project damning illusions, images of Selvara cutting secret deals, executing loyal followers, and allying with rival factions. By dawn, the city burned with rumor. Screens across the underworld flickered with grainy, leaked recordings. Whispers became shouts, paranoia sharpened into violence. Selvara's once unified network began devouring itself, as lieutenants accused each other of treachery and blood stained the neon-lit streets. In the heart of it all, Emma moved like a phantom, feeding the flames yet never being seen. Still, victory never came without a price. At a safe house, Cale confronted her, tension in his voice. "You're not just breaking Selvara's empire. You're breaking the city. These people are tearing each other apart. How long before the streets drown in blood that isn't hers?" Emma turned, her crimson eyes locking on him, glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment, her facade cracked. She had grown up believing in balance, in order, but now the city demanded something darker. "This isn't about morality," she said softly. "It's about survival. If Selvara wins, the city becomes a graveyard of obedience. If I win, it has a chance to breathe again. Chaos isn't destruction, it's freedom in disguise." Her words hung between them, heavy with both conviction and doubt. Cale said nothing more, but the tension in his gaze betrayed the question. He dared not ask. How far would Emma go before she became the very thing she was fighting? Later that night, Emma intercepted a transmission from Selvara herself. Unlike before, her rival's voice carried no arrogance, only fury. "You think you can unmake me with shadows and lies," Selvara hissed through the static. "But remember, Emma, storms burn themselves out, and when yours does, I'll be the one still standing." Emma leaned back in her chair, crimson eyes glowing like coals in the dark. "We'll see," she whispered. The city was no longer Selvara's chessboard. It had become Emma's battlefield. And though the storm raged on, Emma knew it was only the beginning. Tomorrow she would take her boldest step yet, drawing Selvara out of the shadows and into the open, where the final act of this war would begin. The city had gone silent, not the silence of peace, but the tense, breathless hush that comes before violence. Emma stood in the center of the abandoned opera house, its velvet curtains rotted to dust, its grand chandeliers broken and dangling like bones. Every footstep echoed against the hollow walls, carrying weight, carrying promise. She had chosen this place deliberately, once a stage for beauty, now a stage for truth. For the first time since the war began, Selvara was coming to her, not in shadows, not through proxies or whispered threats, but in flesh. Emma had forced, her hand collapsing her empire with illusions, twisting her allies into enemies. Now Selvara wanted blood, and Emma was prepared to give her something far worse, exposure. The heavy doors creaked open. Lightning cut across the sky, illuminating the silhouette of Selvara as she entered. She was a vision of control and fury, clad in dark armor that shimmered faintly with alien alloys. Her eyes burned with determination, though Emma noticed the shadows beneath them, the cracks Emma had been carving deeper each day. "So this is your battlefield," Selvara said, her voice smooth but edged with venom. "A graveyard for music, fitting. You always did prefer theatrics." Emma tilted her head slightly, crimson eyes gleaming in the dark. "Says the woman who built an empire on smoke and mirrors." Selvara stepped forward, the sound of her boots like the tolling of a bell. "You think you've weakened me. You've only called the weak, Emma. What remains is sharper, stronger. My true empire begins now." Emma let her laugh cut through the tension, low and unsettling. "Your empire is already ashes, Selvara, and tonight everyone will see it burn." She tapped a device at her wrist. Hidden holoprojectors whirred to life, casting images across the crumbling stage. Selvara's crimes, her betrayals, her orchestrated massacres, her secret deals with alien warlords, flashed larger than life across the broken opera house walls. But Emma had done more than record. She had gathered witnesses. From the shadows of the opera's balconies, figures emerged. Representatives from the very factions Selvara once controlled, lieutenants who had turned on her, mercenaries who had tasted betrayal. Their faces glowed faintly in the flickering light, each one staring at Selvara with accusation in their eyes. For the first time, Selvara faltered. Just for a heartbeat, Emma saw it, the brief flicker of doubt, the weight of betrayal pressing back against her. But Selvara's composure returned in an instant, her voice rising like a blade. "You think truth matters to them?" she spat. "Power is the only truth this city respects, and I still have it." She raised her hand, summoning a surge of energy from the alien tech woven into her armor. Sparks leapt across the opera house, searing into stone and steel. The crowd recoiled, fear thick in the air, but Emma did not move. She stood still, crimson eyes locked on Selvara's. Her calm in the storm unnerved everyone, even Selvara. "You mistake fear for loyalty," Emma said softly, her voice carrying over the crackle of electricity. "But fear crumbles when it finds a stronger shadow." And with that, she stepped forward, her figure lit by both lightning and hologram. She was no longer just a spy, no longer just an alien woman hiding in secrecy. She was something else entirely now, an idea, a storm given form. The air between them thickened with anticipation. Selvara's hand trembled slightly on her weapon, her eyes betraying the smallest hesitation. For the first time she was no longer certain. Emma smiled, sharp and knowing. "Shall we end the opera?" The storm outside roared in answer, shaking the opera house to its foundations. And in that instant Emma and Selvara charged, two forces of will colliding in a clash that would decide not just the fate of the underworld, but the very soul of the city itself. The opera house shuddered as thunder roared overhead, shaking loose dust and fragments of plaster that drifted down like dying snowflakes. The grand stage, once reserved for performances of light and beauty, now became an arena for destruction. Emma and Selvara stood opposite each other, two silhouettes framed by lightning's savage brilliance. The silence lasted only a breath before it shattered. Selvara struck first. Energy surged from her gauntlets, an arc of searing blue lightning that ripped through the air with enough force to tear stone apart. Emma moved, not with desperation, but with precision, her body twisting like a dancer as the blast scorched the boards where she had stood an instant before. The watchers in the balconies, mercenaries, ex-allies, traitors, opportunists, leaned forward, every eye wide. They had come for blood, for proof, for a victor. Emma could feel their hunger pressing against her skin like heat, feeding the storm inside her. "Always so dramatic, Selvara," Emma called, her voice calm, almost mocking. "But lightning only blinds for a moment. Then it fades." Selvara's eyes narrowed. She lunged forward, closing the space between them with lethal speed. Her blade, a shimmering construct of alien alloy, slashed through the air, leaving trails of light. Emma deflected with her own weapon, a slim dagger infused with alien tech she had stolen long ago. The clash rang out like a bell, echoing through the empty halls. Sparks sprayed as metal met metal. Emma spun, her movements fluid, serpentine, a perfect balance between grace and savagery. Selvara's style was different, raw, relentless, powered by fury. Each strike of hers was meant to dominate, to overwhelm. Each strike of Emma's was meant to disrupt, to remind Selvara she could never fully control the rhythm of this dance. Their eyes locked in every clash, crimson against steel gray. Beneath Selvara's fury, Emma saw it again. Doubt, thin but spreading. "You built your empire on fear," Emma said through gritted teeth, parrying another strike. "But fear doesn't last when someone shows them another choice," Selvara snarled, twisting her blade to force Emma backward. "And what are you, Emma? A savior?" Her voice dripped with venom. "You're a liar, a shadow, a parasite. You feed on others' chaos. Emma smirked despite the strain, the blade's vibration buzzing through her bones. Maybe, but tonight chaos is theirs, and it's yours. With a sudden burst of movement, Emma broke their lock, flipping backward. As she landed, she pressed a control on her wrist. Instantly, the opera house filled with holograms, Silvara's victims, her secret betrayals, her falsified deals. Images flickered across every surface, each one undeniable, each one twisting knives deeper into her already fraying reputation. Gasps echoed from the balconies. Murmurs began, whispers spreading like fire. Silvara faltered again, her blade lowering. "Just an inch," Emma pounced. She slid forward, her dagger striking, not at Silvara's heart, but at her armor's power source. Sparks erupted as the blade pierced circuitry. Silvara staggered, her weapon flickering, its once imposing glow faltering. Rage burned through Silvara's features. She screamed, an animal sound, her voice cracking under the weight of desperation. Her gauntlets discharged another blast of energy, but it was weaker, unstable. Emma absorbed the impact against her dagger, the force throwing her backward, but not breaking her. She rolled, rising to her feet with her crimson eyes blazing. The watchers leaned in closer now, their whispers louder. Some were smiling. Some were shifting allegiance in real time. Silvara saw it. She felt it. The empire she had held with iron, fists, was slipping through her fingers, not from Emma's blade, but from the truth unveiled around her, and that was more devastating than death. Emma advanced slowly, dagger steady, her presence a tide that Silvara could no longer push back. "Do you hear it?" Emma's voice was soft, cutting through the crackling of broken tech. "It's the sound of your empire collapsing, not with war, not with armies, with truth." Silvara's knees buckled slightly, but she forced herself upright, her blade trembling. "They won't follow you. They'll never follow you." Emma stopped just a few feet away, her dagger pointed downward in a gesture of absolute control. "I don't need them to follow me, Silvara. I just need them to stop following you." The words hung in the air, final and merciless. The balconies erupted with sound, not cheers, not yet, but the chaotic roar of allegiances breaking, alliances shifting, old chains snapping. Silvara turned her head toward the noise, her face pale beneath her fury. For the first time, she looked small. Emma watched the moment settle into her, saw the realization break her enemy more deeply than any blade could. The opera house groaned. As thunder boomed again, lightning flashing across Emma's crimson eyes. She stepped closer, her voice low enough only Silvara could hear. "This isn't the end of me, it's the end of you." Silvara's blade fell from her hand, clattering to the broken floor. The storm outside reached its peak, rattling the shattered chandeliers. The empire of Silvara Vera crumbled, not with blood spilled, but with the truth laid bare, and Emma standing victorious at its heart. The storm had passed. The once mighty opera house, drenched in rain and ruin, stood silent except for the drip of water from shattered chandeliers and the murmurs of those who had witnessed the unthinkable. Silvara Vera, the woman who had ruled, with fear and shadow, was broken, her weapon shattered, her power undone, and in her place stood Emma. She remained still at the center of the stage, dagger loose at her side, black hair clinging to her damp skin. Her crimson eyes glowed faintly under the fractured beams of light pouring in from the broken ceiling. Every gaze in the room fixed on her, searching, weighing. Some looked at her with awe, others with suspicion, all with uncertainty. Emma could feel it, the pull, the weight of opportunity pressing against her chest. The empire Silvara had built was leaderless. Its pieces lay scattered, waiting for someone strong enough or cunning enough to gather them. Emma could take it. With one sentence, one command, these people could become hers. The thought tempted her like a forbidden flame, but Emma was not. Blind, power was never free. It devoured those who grasped it. She had seen it consume Silvara, twist her brilliance into tyranny. If Emma claimed the Empire now, she risked becoming exactly what she had fought to destroy. Her dagger slipped back into its sheath with a soft click. She let silence stretch until even the whispers died. Then she spoke, her voice low, but carrying to every corner of the ruined hall. Selvarra is finished. You've all seen what she is, what she's done. I didn't come here to take her throne. I came to take away her chains. What happens next belongs to you." Gasps echoed. Some faces fell in confusion, others in relief. Whispers erupted again, this time with a new edge. Fear of the vacuum she left, excitement at the chance to rise, and the spark of freedom that had been buried for so long. Emma turned her back on them. Her boots clicked against the stage as she walked away, past Selvarra's broken form, past the mercenaries and spies whose loyalties had shifted like tides, past the faces that would never forget her. She didn't look at them again. Outside, the storm clouds had parted. Rain glittered on the streets like spilled diamonds. Neon lights flickered across the wet pavement, painting the city in fractured colors: blood red, emerald green, icy blue. For the first time, the city felt different, alive, unchained. Emma inhaled deeply, the night air sharp and cold. But she didn't smile. Victory wasn't sweet. It never was. She had exposed the truth, toppled an empire, but she knew the cycle would never end. Someone would try to seize what Selvarra had lost. Someone always did. And when they did, Emma would be watching. Her wrist comm beeped softly. A voice, familiar, rough, half-amused, crackled through the static. "So? You're alive. Knew you would be. What now, Emma?" She tilted her head back, letting the rain wash across her face. Then she answered, her voice calm, carrying the weight of certainty and mystery both. "Now, I disappear, until the world needs me again." She stepped into the shadows of the alley, her crimson eyes the last thing visible before the darkness swallowed her whole. In the end, Emma didn't claim a throne, a crown, or a victory parade. She claimed something far rarer: freedom. And the legend of the red-eyed shadow was born, an eternal ghost in the heart of the galaxy.